You guys saw Get Along, or some of you may have been there for the Get Along stream. This is clearly quite a bit simpler. And you can probably hear it too. There's not as much going on. How long did it take you to make? Well, if we're counting in all the, you know, just waiting and getting things figured out, I think that's actually a good question. I don't remember exactly when we started, but my guess is we started around September. I'm going to say he hit me up around August or September, and he was like, hey, I want to do a Christmas track. I know we got a little bit of time right now, but I just wanted to get the ball rolling. Because, you know, he's got this thing now where he kind of tries to collaborate with numerous people for his Christmas special, and so he keeps trying to build it every year. I guess he's been doing this for a couple of years now, and he was like, yeah dude, I'd love to do a song with you for the video. And I was like, well, absolutely, I'd love to. Did Scott approach you to help make a song, or was it your idea? Yeah, it was basically his idea. Okay, so if we want to go way back, way back to how the whole thing probably started, I gave Scott a shout out in my Did Mario Kart Age Well RTTTA. I guess enough people brought it to his attention that he was mentioned in the video, that he probably watched it. We never actually acknowledged if he did or not, but my guess is he did, because he followed me on Twitter afterward, and I DM'd him and I was like, hey man, just want to say I really love your stuff. I just wanted to be able to personally speak that out and just say I really love your work. And he was like, yeah dude, I really like your stuff too. And he was like, if you ever want to collaborate, I was like, absolutely, right back at you, man. If you ever want to do something, hit me up. I'll definitely keep that in mind. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. So probably almost a year goes by. It may have even been a year. I don't, you know. And then this, what I said, probably August or September. We communicated vaguely a little bit. Like I said earlier, he's a very down-to-earth guy. And honestly, the first time we got on a call, we spent the first 2 hours just talking about everything and nothing. You know, like we went on forever just talking about random crap. We probably talked for 2 hours, man. But we did ultimately like come to he was like, okay, I'm thinking of something. Like he showed me something he had kind of done in that vein beforehand, where it was like speaking, singing. Like it's not rapping, but it's not singing, you know? It's like talk singing, you know what I mean? So he showed me an example of what he had done before. He in fact, actually, it'd be really interesting if I showed you guys this. He ended up, yeah, he gave me some other examples. He was like very kind of happy-go-lucky, Christmassy kind of sound. He was like, I'm not a musician, you know what to do here, but you know, these are what the ideas I'm thinking. I asked about like if All I Want for Christmas Is You was a good reference point. He was like, actually, that's a great reference point. Because of that, I tried a different kind of track before I landed on this one. I believe I have a bounce of it. And, you know, I wasn't really feeling it, if I'm honest. And I'm sure you guys probably would feel the same way. It was a stupid demo. You know, it wasn't going to sound this bad, I guess, as a disclaimer, as a precaution. But, you know, this... very, very cheesy. Very, like, cheesy. Anyway, so that was the original song. I sent it to him. He actually wasn't... He was like, yeah, I dig this. But I was like, I sat there, I was like, I can do better. You know? And so I was like, all right, you know what? I hate to do this, but I'm pulling out the classic Garrett sound. Because I really knew it was probably going to work here. And honestly, he probably wanted me on board because he wanted that. So that's how this version came to be, which is totally different. I sent it to him. And he was kind of like, you know, they're both good. I like both of them. And he was like, you know, Scott's not very musical, and he was like, listen, man, I'm not very musical. So I'm going to let you make the judgments here. But of course, I wanted to make sure that whatever I gave him is something that he really loved, something that he was going to be happy with. So I was like, okay, listen, which one do you feel like you would have a better time and writing lyrics over? Which one do you kind of feel out more? You know, don't try to think musically, just go with your gut. What do you think? He picked this one, which doesn't shock me, because I was like, yeah. So so this is what happened. Here's what the track looks like. It's quite a bit smaller than Get Along, as I was saying earlier. Get Along is giant, and it's not to compare, it's just to show it always changes, you know. So this has only got, well, including my vocals, that adds it way up, right? So these are all my vocals. All of this is my vocals. These are my stacks. So yeah, it's, you know, it's a pretty straightforward track. You know, this is my piano, which is Keyscape for the record. Great plugin. Great piano sounds. Thanks for the follow, Ian. So also, sorry if you hear any weird clunky stuff. It's because I'm trying to stream and play kind of a CPU heavy track. Right? So there's two parts to this. There's actually two pianos, and I didn't name them differently, which is kind of funny. But I've got my main piano, right, that's doing the chords. But then I added in this kind of high, what timing? Welcome to the stream, man. So yeah, so I've got kind of slightly a little bit more in like the right ear. You got like that high, and that was actually one of the last things I added to the song. You know, I made some last minute arrangement changes. And then of course you've got your good old Glock, which really gives you that kind of Christmassy feel. Right. And again, this is all Keyscape right now. All of this is Keyscape. Also a very, very simple chord progression. One that I go to a lot myself. And it's very happy, and it kind of has a Christmassy feel to it. So even though I use it a lot, I felt like it made a lot of sense here. So, and then you've got, Logic actually has really good studio strings. They added these in about a year ago. The ones that they had before this didn't suck. They weren't great. These are actually not bad. You know, they're no like LA Strings library or anything, but they're pretty good for what it's worth. So, right, I've got a few. So I've got violin 1, and then I've got violin 2. Violin 2 for the most part is doing that pizzicato thing. Right? Very simple crap, but together with the piano, it's a nice little added, like, staccato thing. Right? So, it's just a nice little addition. It gives it a little bit more of that Christmassy feel, I think. Especially the pizzicato thing. I always feel like that easily can relate with like with Christmassy kind of sound. And then I start adding a little bit more in. CPU freaking out my computer, and I got a little bit of a trill going on here. Hold on, playback. I should probably mention piano. Here's kind of what the EQ looks like. I am boosting the living crap out of the high end here. If I were to And I'm also taking out quite a bit of the low end so that I can allow the bass to really take that room. Not all of it, because I definitely want to hear the notes. Okay, so this is without the EQ. With. Quite a bit brighter. You know, this one, pretty similar EQ, but I also brought in a lot of kind of mid-high range to really bring out those notes, you know? Right? Simple stuff. Glock is obviously brightened up, as you can see here. Violins have a different kind of EQ going on. Anyway, gotta go. Definitely tuning in for the Jackbox stream. All right, peace out, CCTP. Hey, glad that I caught the stream. You're one of my favorite musicians on the internet. Hey, thanks, Cardino. I really appreciate that, man. And then, of course, I've got it's like my emulation of a guitar, which is this clav with an amp and a wah effect on it. So it's like a funk guitar kind of sound, but it's an emulation of a clavinet. Again, also Keyscape. Love Keyscape to death. And I've also got a little bit of a slapback delay on that. That's what you see here. That's what this is being sent to. This is just a little slapback delay. So it's a very quick delay. That's why they call it a slap delay. Because it's immediately slapping back. Right, so if I turn it off, this is what it sounds like. Pretty dry, it's not that interesting. If I throw that little bit of slap delay on it, it's got the wah effect. Yeah, so there's that. And the reason I throw that in there is because of a certain lyric.
DJ banding Guitar Hero, just the games.
I'm just playing with his lyrics. Guitar Hero. A little bit of a guitar moment there, even though it's not technically a guitar. And then I've got also in the string area. In fact, I should probably actually like reorganize these. This is where it really should be. There's the double bass strings, right? All Logic strings, by the way, you know? All Logic streams. Strings, gosh, I can't talk. You got your, and the thing is, let's see, what am I doing in terms of EQ with this bass? So I'm dropping out some of the 1K because I'm leaving that for these strings up here. As you can see, particularly Violins 1. Actually, Violins 2 is also taking out a little bit of the 1K, it looks like. Kind of the same area code. However, Violin 1 is actually boosting 1K because I'm kind of... What the EQ is doing is I'm carving out certain frequencies so that they pop out for certain things and leave room for those things for other instruments, if that makes sense. All right, peace out, Keanu. And then, of course, the muted bass. Actually, while I'm here, this is something I've talked about before. Console EQ. This is where things start to get technical for the more the mix and recording engineer kind of people. But I love to use the console EQ because it colors the sound a certain way. Particularly for bass and kick, I love it. I'm a big fan of it. I've got a little bit of a low cut here, which means that I'm taking out some of the lowest end so that it's not muddling and fighting with the actual like electric bass sample. That's pretty much one of the main things I'm doing. I've got the low gain up a little bit, around 110 hertz. But I really like the way the console EQ sounds on bass and kick. And it is Logic Pro's emulation of a Neve like 73. And it's a really, really good emulation, actually. So, again, if you get Logic, there's a lot of stuff you get built into the system. I'm using primarily stuff that's already in the system. You know, so far the most the most used thing that is not Logic is Keyscape, you know? How much is the program on its own? I believe it's 200 on the App Store. Right, so here's your electric bass now. By the way, it's definitely preferred, definitely advised that you watch this stream with headphones or good earbuds of some sort. Right, so I've actually got a bass amp on this bass while we're here. I'll try and fly through this so I'm not boring you guys to tears. But this is what this bass sounds like with nothing on it. Again, if you have headphones on, this is actually gonna make a lot more sense. Okay, that's just the bass sample. Again, this is actually a Logic sample I'm using. Now I'm gonna turn on the bass amp, which gives me a little bit more warmth and deep end from the bass. Right? That's with it on, this is with it off. If you listen, it's subtle, but I'm warming it up actually quite a bit. It's sounding a lot more deep now, but I'm not quite done. So then I take it to console EQ, okay? So here is, again, I like I said, I love the way console EQ colors. Now that's a certain word you'll hear a lot with engineers, is how something colors the sound. And essentially that's how the circuitry kind of will, the circuitry inside of the hardware, how it may distort or affect the audio going into it. I'm trying to figure out a very simple kind of layman's terms way to describe it. Now, the thing is, obviously none of this is hardware, this is software. Software nowadays, a lot of people try to emulate what the hardware did because people loved how stuff sounded through the hardware, if that makes sense. So, all that said, with the console EQ on, let's play it without the EQ on. You can hear a little bit more of that deep end coming in. Right? How long did it take you to make this? Like I was saying earlier, if we counted all the waiting and the times that I essentially just had to all the points in which we weren't technically working on it, but we kept coming back to it. We started around August or September, I want to say, of this year. However, if we're really just talking about like back to back how long it took, my guess is, you know, maybe a couple days, you know, a day or two, if we're talking just back to back, no pauses. I don't know. On my end, I would definitely say that. Right? So what I'm doing is I'm adding, it's all low end. So I'm down at 60 hertz here, which is fairly low. There's no low cut on this. And I'm just adding a little bit, about 2.3 decibels as it says there, turning up that low end a little bit. Right? Again, without it. Just got a little bit more meat to it now, if you will. And then final touch, compressor. I love the vintage opto emulation that Logic has, which is kind of an emulation of like an LA2A for any of you gearheads out there. Great emulation, good compressor, sounds great on bass. And I'm actually doing quite a bit more to the bass with compression on this than I do with a lot of other instruments. You know, I kind of have sometimes a slower attack and slower release so that it's not picking up the middle transients where sometimes you'll hear ringing. Now these are samples, so that's not as big of an issue as like someone actually playing the bass, but it does help. And not to mention, again, I love the way that the opto colors the sound. I have 3,000 Garrett bucks help. I don't know what to tell you, man. All right, see you later. Some guy is Pooh. Saw a familiar name and some king for another day credits. Hey, might be me, man. Might be me. Yeah, guys, I'll do a breakdown of that rearrangement too sometime next week if we hit a sub goal for it. I'd be happy to. I'd love to do that one. Yeah. Yeah, so we're at like, you know, the meter is going all the way back to like -5 decibels. But, you know, anyway, so it's, if you use a compressor right on the bass, here's what it sounds like without the compressor. With it on. Gives it a little bit more beef, you know? So, okay, so now that I've done all of that, here's with it off, here's with all the stuff off. And now on. See, there's a little bit more meat, you know? Anyway, moving on. There's the bells, which you can't do Christmas without the church bells, right? Gotta hear these, man. Very simple. Also from Keyscape, from a certain Chimatron sample that they're doing. Right. And for context, here's... very Christmassy. And then, of course, you can't go without your sleigh bells, the biggest trope in Christmas history. So I've got two things going on. There's the loop from Logic themselves. Again, so many great things just in Logic. So there's a loop. And then I also... so that loop is slightly more, as you can see here, slightly more in the right ear. And then this one is a sample I just played, and it's just doing eighth notes. Slightly pitched like lower than this one, so they sound different. And it's a little bit more in the left ear. Capiche? Okay, and then we've got the rhythm section. So I'll just go ahead and kind of isolate all this on its own. This always takes up, almost always takes up like more tracks than anything else, maybe other than vocals, because there's so much stuff that I stack on top of each other. It's a pretty fat beat, man. It's a very happy track, but you could turn that into a mean track if you wanted to. It's a really happy-go-lucky track, but if you wanted to, you could turn that into a stanky song, man. Okay, so what's going on here? Let's break it down. So let's start with our kick. I always have like a pretty strong kick sample that I work with. Again, like I said, the console EQ, I love the way it colors kick and bass, so you're also seeing it here. Actually turning up quite a bit of the low end. Around 80-ish hertz on the kick. I usually have the kick, if there's any bass boost on it, I usually have it at a higher bass boost frequency, if that makes sense, than the bass. I leave the bass at a lower boost than the kick. Does that make sense? Thanks for the follow, Drago. Appreciate it. So here's without that EQ on. In fact, here, let's turn off both here. This is without EQ or compressor. It's not a bad sample, but it's missing some oomph, if you feel me. So I grab this console EQ, again, like the way it colors it. I turn up about 3.5 dB of 80 hertz. So I turn up, and I also am quite a bit turning up the high end. So I'm giving it quite a bit more high end. It was a little too muffled for me. It wasn't cutting through the mix as much. And I'm also turning up a little bit of the mids, around 3. So here's with it off. On. Off. On. Got it? So EQ is pretty useful to the drums. Sometimes, sometimes it's even more useful to me than the compressor. In other cases, I suppose the compressor might be more useful than the EQ, but it always depends. So then I've got my compressor. which essentially is what it's doing in this case. The compressor, always for me with percussion, it's a volume controller. So what I'm doing is I'm letting the meter at the very last second, or not very last second, within here it says 32 milliseconds. It will take the transient and immediately pull it back. So you're only getting that front little transient, so you get a lot more of that from the front. Right? And the release is slow, so you're not hearing any of the sustain from the kick afterward. Without. With. Just gives it a little bit more oomph. You feel me? Drum Funeral, thank you for the follow. Yeah, simple as that. You know, and I don't like to compress the living snot out of my stuff. I used to, and I learned that you get a lot more livelihood in music and sonic quality out of it if you just kind of play with the compressor, but, you know, don't get too passionate with it. Right, so we're not even getting to -5 dB here. So then I've got this this sample here that I actually got from Splice. Splice is great, by the way. If you ever need a library with, go to Splice, man. They've got cool stuff. So I found this boom bap loop. Here's my EQ, bringing up a little bit of the mid highs, actually taking out a little bit of the super highs, try to leave room for some other stuff. Bring up a little bit of that like mid-low end, particularly for the snare hit. So here's without that EQ. It's actually quite a bit, especially if you're on headphones, you're definitely going to notice the difference for this one. This one's kind of night and day. And the reason I'm kind of lo-fiing it is so that I can leave room for other things. It just sounds better overall. Like, okay, personally, if it was on its own, I'd take that. But with everything mixed, it sounds a lot more better if you almost kind of lo-fi it, if you will. So there's that loop. I've also got a tape emulation on it. This just kind of gives it some nice saturation. I really like the way that the tape emulation kind of colors stuff. Yeah, and check out how much actually, again, if you're on headphones, this is actually almost night and day. I'm giving it quite a bit of like distortion from the tape. Off. On. That's really cool. That actually really gives it some oomph, if you will. And then I've got my main snare, which again is from Splice. Which, by the way, Max Factor noted that he loves Splice. I agree. I think it's fantastic. Now, actually, I was going to expand the sound of this more, give it like some verb and stuff. I didn't. I was gonna like widen it out, and I never did. However, I ended up using the Ssl plugin, which is a great plugin. Really great. I use it quite a bit. And here I'm adding some high end. I'm cutting out a little bit of the low end, and I'm actually adding in a little, like bringing up a little bit of the mid lows where that low snare sound is hitting. And I'm also using the compressor here. As you can see, it's just kind of tickling the meter here. Very, very minor, but here's without it. With. Yeah, we took the blanket off the snare. And then I've got another Splice sample, and that's just hitting every other snare. This is a classic trick of mine. I have a clap like every other snare hit. And another big thing that I do is I make sure that the claps always kind of come in a little bit before the snare. So you really get the sound of the claps because they come in before the snare. In fact, a lot of times what I'll do is literally I'll just go to this delay thing up here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I'll just go to this delay thing, which can be used for delays or it can be used for negative delay, which just means coming in beforehand. So I'll have it at like a certain... Then I've got a hat sample I used, and as opposed to, this is something I like heard, I want to say it may have even been Scream, and I don't know if it was like compression that was making it happen, or if it was like literally just the way I heard it, or maybe they played it this way, but the hat didn't hit every single time. It wasn't like an eighth hat that was like it was only hitting whenever the kick or the snare wasn't hitting, and I really liked that. So I've kind of been doing that here and there, and I do it here. So with the kick and the snare, this is... Right? I don't know. It's a different kind of rhythm that I really like. So, and again, that's just another sample from Splice. And I just boosted the high end a little bit and took out some of the low end. That's it. That's all I did that to the hat. That's without EQ. That's with it on. See? Very simple. If I had more time, I probably would have added a little bit of verb to the snare and to the hat, just to give them a little bit more width and space. But as it is, it's not that bad. What's up, Yemen? How you doing? And then I've got one other sample here, also from Splice and everything nice. Lo-fiing this a little bit too. Here's the original track without the EQ. See, so there's a little bit more actually, and also this, again, great for headphone users. So this is the original track. This is the original track before I did anything. And the tricks I did are very simple here, but let me go ahead and break them down. Okay, so that's the sample. So when I turn on, this is sample delay. Basically what this means is I'm taking one of the stereo channels and delaying it a little bit. And by doing this, what happens is you get this really interesting, stereo sound. So here's without it on, right? But when I turn it on, there's a little bit of delay in the right ear. And what that does is it gives you this interesting stereo sound. Again, great if you've got your headphones on. Now it's a little wide, right? Now it's actually kind of, it's really cool, isn't it? It's a really cool effect. I use it a lot. So there's that. And then I need water. And then there's the channel EQ. So then what this is I'm taking out a little bit of high end, a little bit of low end, and bringing up a little bit of the mid, which gives it a little bit more of a radio effect. It's not a very like strong radio effect. That's with no EQ, with it on. Cool? Capiche? Kabosh. So, and then of course I've got the Mark III. That good old thing. Brighten it up a little bit with EQ, but that's pretty much it. I actually also did the sample delay thing to give it some stereo space. It's pretty much in mono originally. This is without that sample delay. Simple. And then last but not least, we got this little fill that I also got from Splice. I'm doing a sample delay on this as well, a little bit more of a radio effect on this. So this is without any effects. This is what it sounds like without any effects. Right? This is with all effects. Okay, so I'm giving it a little bit of that radio effect again, taking out highs, taking out lows, and bringing up the mid to mid highs. Sample delay again, doing the same idea, bringing it out from here to like here, right? In stereo, and then I'm slamming it, I think quite a bit actually, with this tape emulator, right? And that's how you get that. That's all that is. So then again, all of that together. Again, that's a pretty mean beat, dude. If it wasn't for the cutesy music on top of it, I think that would be a really stanky beat. I think you could create something real dirty with that. And then for the star of the show, Scott. So he pretty much just sent me his recording. You know, dude already obviously knows how to work the mic.
We got him.
So I pretty much just took, so let me actually go ahead and show you what the original track sounds like before I mixed it. So this is without anything.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew. Karaoke Revolution with no microphone. That might be fun.
Okay, here's with all of the stuff I did to mix it.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew. Karaoke Revolution with no microphone. That might be fun.
Okay, so what did I do? Good question, Garrett. So this is what I did. We're going to start with the EQ here. Obviously brought out quite a bit of the high end, so you get a lot more clarity, a lot more air in the top, so it doesn't sound like he's under a blanket. You know, here, let me go ahead and turn all these off. Again, without.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's
with the EQ on.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99.
All right, peace out, Seb. So, thanks for coming by, man. I really appreciate the gifted subs.
We got American Idol on PS2.
So what else am I doing? So I'm obviously bringing up a lot of the high end. I'm taking out a little bit of low end, all the unnecessary stuff. Actually bringing up just a hair, a little bit of the mid lows here. To get a little bit more of the meat out of his, you know, lower voice. However, there were some frequencies that definitely were annoying and didn't need to really be in there. So one that very typically can be an issue for vocals is around the 1 to 1.5K range. So I tend to take out a little bit of that most of the time, not always, but you know, there's no rule to this, but that tends to be a tried and true deal for a lot of vocalists, especially in the male realm.
We got
it can be a little bit different with female vocalists. I'm also taking out a little bit of the mid highs here, so right around, as it's saying, like 28, 100, because again, another frequency that's just a little annoying. And then you may see this tiny little spot here that I'm taking out quite a bit. That was just an annoying frequency that essentially what I do is I sit here and I'll actually go through, I'll play it back and just find where that annoying frequency is by turning it way up. If that makes sense, turning up that tiny little spot way up and moving it around until I find the spot, right? So there was a little bit of an annoying frequency there, got rid of it. Okay, and then I actually have another channel EQ, which is essentially doing the same thing. I'm actually bringing up a little bit of this area now, and I'm taking out a couple other spots. That's what that's doing. It's just tweaking it a little bit. So without that second EQ,
we got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
Okay, with.
We got American Idol on
minor,
PS2. It's $2.99. Of course.
Annoying spots there. That's essentially all that is. And then we've got what is one of my favorite things, Virtual Mix Rack, which is from Slate. Great company with great stuff. So this is where a lot of the magic happens. Obviously the EQ is very, very important to the way it sounds and how it sits in the mix, but also the FG Stress, which is a emulator of the Distressor, which is maybe one of the best compressors ever made. Sounds great, really fantastic compressor. I don't use it on everything, but it sounded great on Scott. So without either of these things on, this is obviously what it sounds like.
We got American Idol on PS2.
Okay, it's nice. But when we turn on the Distressor, which is essentially my compressor here, it both colors and the way I've handled the knobs here compresses it in a very nice.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
So it's really bringing out the consonants so that he's a lot more clear. Let's turn that off again so you can hear it without it.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
On.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
It's also really controlling a lot of the points where he gets louder. It pulls it back a little bit, you know? So it's both pulling back those louder moments and then also bringing out the consonants that he's saying. Now that's just a typical usual trick that the compressor is used for. However, the way the Distressor colors his voice and makes it like it almost takes out some certain annoying frequencies while it's at it. And for that reason alone, I really like it and prefer it over like some other kind of compressor. Not always the best pick, but for Scott, it really worked. Then there's the air EQ. I talked about this with my Get Along music, or not music, I was going to say music video, but I just mean Get Along song. I have been using this almost religiously. Essentially, what it's doing, why it's called the air EQ, is that the idea is it's literally adding air to the vocal or to whatever you add it to, which pretty much means as opposed to just bringing up the high end and the EQ, it's almost bringing in like this unknown higher register that's not annoying but actually brings like a lot of crisp clearness.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
That's with it on. This is with it off.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
It just adds in this top end that just like makes it like literally like an ice crystal clear. It's so cool. And I love that plugin. And then finally, last but not least, I don't actually use this that often, but on Scott it was pretty important, a de-esser, which essentially just finds those frequencies where he says his sibilances, like primarily S, and it can be a little strong, right? And so what this does, so you don't have to go in and automatically turn down every time he has an S, it does it for you.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
So you see how every time he has a sibilance, this thing pulls back because it's catching those.
PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
See that? If I turn this off, they're a little bit more harsh.
PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew. PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
See, it immediately softens them without getting rid of it. You know what I mean?
PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
Very, very cool. Very, very useful plugin. Used almost all the time on most vocals for most people. I actually have because I actually have a little bit of a lisp when I talk. Because I actually talk out of the side of my mouth. My S's are not very strong. So when I mix myself, I never need the de-esser because my S's are so soft. I end up actually having to find the frequencies where I am using my S's and just boost it way up because my S's are way softer than most people's. Which then brings me to my vocal. Now, actually, before I get to that, I do want to mention that I'm using a little bit of that slap delay, like I explained with the clavinet earlier. I'm using that same effect on Scott. So without that slap delay, you may want to actually turn up your monitors a little bit or whatever you're using so you can hear this.
We got American Idol.
This is with nothing on.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
Right? If I turn this on, you're going to hear that it sounds like now he's actually in a little bit of a space. He almost sounds a little bit wider too. Like he's a little bit more in the room.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew.
Off.
Karaoke Revolution with no microphone. That might be fun.
On.
DJ Band and Guitar Hero. Just the games. Price point 0.
It's incredibly subtle, but what it is a little slapback delay that makes it almost sound like he's a little bit more in the room. You know what I mean? I'm telling you, it's subtle, but it adds quite a bit because it keeps him from sounding like he's confined in a little area and he's just dead center. You know, it keeps him from sounding dead. Yeah, it's exactly. It's like a very small echo, and there's different tricks for widening vocals, but that's one that can be very useful. So to basically explain that, I'm using a stereo delay where there's two delays going on, left ear, right, and right ear. Right? What I'm doing is one is a little bit shorter than the other one. This one's going at 63 milliseconds, so 63 millisecond respond time. So the vocal happens, this happens 63 milliseconds afterward. Got it? This one is happening 87 milliseconds afterward. So it's very minor, but it's enough that it's again the same idea as that sample delay, where you're delaying one side a little bit so you get more of a stereo width. I'm also cutting out quite a bit of the high end, so it's not really fighting or very obvious behind Scott. I'm keeping it more warm, and then of course I'm keeping the feedback at 0%. If I have this up, you're gonna hear this. If I have this up, you're gonna start to hear almost like a weird reverb or.
Got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course.
It's bizarre. If I turn it way up.
$2.99, of course it blew. Karaoke Revolution.
Weird. And that may have good uses, but here you don't want that. So you always want the feedback at 0, so it's literally just one delay back. Got it. As opposed to got it. Does that make sense? How do you know what effects to use? Just play around until something clicks? Pretty much. You know, after doing this so long, there are definitely times where there's certain tried and true methods for me that I know, oh, this is going to sound good here. Oh, this is going to work here. But I pretty much spend the whole time experimenting. I pretty much will find whatever is going to work best, you know? But in this instance, it was definitely like a tried and true situation, especially because I was kind of on a time limit, you know, where I just knew this is going to sound good. And not to mention, you also have to understand what you're working with. You have to understand the artist, the performer, whoever it is, their music. In this case, Scott is a comedian. In this case, you know, I don't think we want to get crazy with effects because we're not here to try and show off some crazy thing. It's a fun song for a comedy video. So what's most important is Scott's clarity and that he sits in the mix without sounding like it's out of place with the rest of the video. Does that make sense? So in this case, the most I wanted to do was give him a little bit of an echo just so that he sat in the mix a little bit better. But I wanted it to sound like it could have come out of any part of the video, or the video could come back in after the song and it would make, it would feel pretty much seamless, which watching it back, I think it was pretty close. Now, of course, it turns out that the scene that he had it in was the scene where he was talking to people in kind of a big room. So there's quite a bit of reverb. But regardless, I think it works a lot better than trying to like throw a whole bunch of giant reverbs or delays on Scott. It just, I don't think it benefits the video or him even at all in that case. So I kept it very subtle in this case. So that's a very long answer, but I hope that kind of answers your question, Cardino. Ladies and gentlemen, I've reached $690 Nice. Okay, so then there's my vocals, which are actually, sorry, I said that last time and then forgot something else, and here we are again. Just want to mention, this is my automating. So this is me going in and manually, actually, despite the compressor doing most of the job of bringing out consonants and taking back loud volume in his voice automatically, I still feel like certain phrases and certain words are not as clear until I automate it myself. Or another older term that a lot of people still use and a lot of people still do is writing the faders. The fader is, of course, that knob. They call it a fader. It's kind of hard to explain it any other way. But when you see someone at a mix board, it's that thing that they push up and down volume. I mean, it looks like this thing right here, right? I'm just trying to speak in layman terms. I know some of you guys are not as experienced or know as much about this stuff. So a lot of people call that writing the faders, which is, and I mean like literally like writing in a car, riding a bike, which is probably exists because, you know, they've got their hand on the fader, and what they're doing is they're turning it up and down wherever they feel like the volume of the vocals need to be up or they need to come down a little bit, or whatever track it may be. So I'm essentially doing that here. I'm bringing up the volume quite a bit where I feel like he gets quieter.
We got American Idol on PS2. It's $2.99. Of course it blew. Karaoke Revolution with no microphone. That might be.
So I even the minor stuff here. You see this tiny little spot? That's me turning up the th and with, just to make sure people can hear that he's saying with.
Shun with no microphone.
Does that make sense? Is that tiny little spot with? I'm bringing up the volume just a bit so people can hear that.
Revolution with no microphone. That might be fun.
Again, there. You see that? Might be fun. I'm bringing up fun a little bit because the f and fun is a little quiet for me. So I brought that up. Anyway, so I pretty much do that for the whole track. And then, okay, I think I spoke about everything with Scott. So then there's my tracks, which are obviously way more, but it's because I'm doing backing stacks. So here's all of them.
Karaoke Revolution.
Right, so I'm also doing added little embellishments behind him, right?
Guitar Hero.
Right.
DJ banding Guitar Hero. Just the games, nor the fuss.
It's a Pac-Man Christmas.
FIFA there and everywhere. 99 cents. That's
yeah. So I've talked about this before about my tricks because I did this with Get Along, except actually it's a little bit different this time. Again, every song calls for a little bit of a different approach because again, you're serving the song. You know, the song is going to take you somewhere. You just gotta go with it. You feel me? So basically, what I do is 4 stacks left and right. This is my left stack. Oh, you can actually hear that crap here. We need to turn off some of these so that you're not hearing any weird crap. So, all right, peace out, Max. Thanks for coming by, man. You got your left stack. You got your right stack. Left stack. Right stack. These are all singing the same thing, but they're all different takes, obviously. So you get an interesting sound.
Karaoke revolution.
And a nice, big, kind of wide sound, too. Thanks for coming by, Max. I really appreciate you.
Karaoke revolution.
Right, so here's just 2 takes.
Karaoke revolution.
It's already a cool effect because it's like nice and wide. Add in 2 more.
Karaoke revolution.
It's thicker now, you know? And then of course I do
Guitar Hero.
Now I'm actually keeping it to only 2 passes here, but I'm essentially
Guitar Hero.
So let me just break down this harmony, just so you guys.
Guitar Hero.
There's first part.
Guitar Hero.
Second part, right?
Guitar Hero.
Third part.
Guitar Hero.
And fourth part.
Guitar Hero.
And all together.
Guitar Hero.
Nice, cute. And then of course, same deal here. 4 passes, actually 4 takes of Bargain Bin Christmas on a low octave, and then 4 takes at a higher octave. So here's a lower octave.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Right? High pass.
The Bargain Bin.
I'm saying high pass, that means something else in the music world. But essentially,
it's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
did you individually record all those? Yes, correct. Yeah, that's what I do. I stack all of them. So yes, all of these were individually recorded. So yeah, I literally go left ear.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Take 2. Do another take.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Right? Then we do another left take.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Right take.
The Bargain Bin Christmas.
And so on and so forth. So
The Bargain Bin Christmas.
you end up getting a nice little larger, wide, thick kind of sound. And then of course I do that same approach again, but with the high, doing a higher octave.
The Bargain Bin Christmas.
And I'm even a little pitchy. I'm not singing it great, but it honestly sounded good altogether.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Yeah, and there you go. 2 left, 2 right. That's dope. Yeah. With Get Along, what I did was I would do 1 left, 1 right close up, and then 1 left, 1 right further away from the mic. And you get kind of the room sound, and you get this larger sound out of it. And I really like doing that too. In this case, I actually did all of it close to the mic. But a lot of times, most of the time, I do 1 take left, 1 take right close to the mic, and then 1 take left, 1 take right farther away from the mic, and you get a nice room sound from that. And then of course I've got my harmonies which come in.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
It's just a 3-part harmony. Sounds good over those chords though, you know, because if I play back the chords while that's going.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Sounds nice. So, yeah, and if you want me to break down again that, I believe it's
a Bargain Bin Christmas.
that's harmony 2, or 1, I guess, and harmony 2.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Second. Yes, I'm still live, Shaq, believe it or not.
It's a Bargain Bin Christmas.
Just take pedalboard, you swine.
Right? So, nice. And then I've also got, makes you say, nice.
Turn these copies into a maze.
Yeah, I've even got this little tiny, it's very subtle, I don't know how many people caught it, but
Into a maze.
this is stupid crap.
Turn these copies into a maze. Like,
Very tiny stuff. My team won the first leg of the final in the last minute. I almost lost my voice. Nice! I'm glad to hear that.
before it goes offline. Madden before it
Yeah, so then, of course, again, the other embellishments here.
before it goes offline. Madden 16, 17, 18. Not as good as 08.
And that's a pretty simple thing I'm doing there. I'm literally doing 16 and for, like, I pretty much give myself parts. So, left ear does... Four of the left ear does 16 and 18.
16, 18.
So that makes it stupid. I know, it sounds so dumb. And then part 2 does 17.
17,
Right? Stupid crap, but hey, it was fun.
16, 17, 18.
Line. Madden 16, 17, 18. Not as good as 08, pretty blatantly. But who cares? It's at a great...
And then again, yeah, another one of those,
But who cares?
you know.
It's a bargain. Bargain bin.
Nice. Gifts with value, they say. Nice. Gifts with value and some class.
It's a bargain bin Christmas. Yeah.
Adding in a little ninth there.
Yeah.
It's nice sounding little chord created through my vocals there. You know, add in this crap.
Bargain bin Christmas. Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah, man, I added in all those vocal embellishments without Scott's permission. I was like, listen, man, tell me if there's anything you want dropped. And he's like, this is perfect. I love it. You're done. Good. Don't touch it. I was like, great. And that was it. So, yeah, that's the track. As you can see, quite a bit simpler than doing the breakdown for Get Along. But a very fun song. I honestly really enjoyed it. And man, this freaking beat, man, it bops, dude. On its own, man, I'm telling you, you can create something so stanky out of this. Hot! Oh, let's just add it all together, why don't we?
Offline. Madden 16, 17, 18. Not as good as 08, pretty blatantly. But who cares? It's at a great price. Presents that'll make anybody say nice. Gifts with value and some class.
It's a bargain bin Christmas. Yeah.
Easy. Very simple. And I guess I should also just add, because I didn't mention these, you know, there's this reverse cymbal. This is very typical, very old trick to move into transitions. It's kind of overused, but it works, so why fix what's not broken? Wow, so great. That's in there. And then I also forgot to mention I actually have an acoustic guitar sample that I threw in here. And it just kind of plays every little bit. That's all it is. Right? It's very subtle in there, man. You can hardly hear it unless you really look for it. Like, especially when the vocal's on top of it.
Yo, Dimensions have...
Hey, Ant Rock with the Twitch Prime. Let's go, man. Thank you so much. Holy crap. Hold on. Hold the phone.
Ant Rock, welcome to Kingdom Cards. Twitch Prime.
Thank you so much, man. Will you put this on your SoundCloud? It is on my SoundCloud. You can go look right now. It is currently on my SoundCloud. Yeah, how you doing, Aaron? What's up, man? Yeah, so there's all that. So yeah, that's the track, man. And you know, if you want me to, like, I could also, this is always fun to do. We could build the beat here.
Take pedalboard, you swine. Play it before.
Also, I should probably just note, I have actually a sample because I can't do glissando, like chromatic glissandos with these strings. As good as they are for being Logic strings, there's a lot you can't do, including the glissando. So I just took a sample and blended it in, so you hear that. Very, very little, but you know, I felt like that probably needed to be mentioned, just so I'm not leaving anything out. But yeah, that's the track. Scott the Waz, man. Go check it out if you haven't. You definitely should go check out the video. It's Bargain Bin Christmas, his latest Christmas special.